welcome to another SOFHAB Reviews. Today I'm doing a review on the Mysteries of the Terracotta Warriors, a Netflix documentary. And once again, joining me is Rascal Entertainment.
Hello.
This is based on the serendipitous discovery in 1974 of approximately 8,000 pottery soldiers that were created to guard the gravesite of the first emperor of a unified China. And it was found by farmers actually digging a well.
Yes. And before we start that, be sure to like, subscribe, and click notification when it's on SOFHAB reviews on many other videos.
Yes, and thank you for joining us and subscribing. We appreciate you so much. So in this one, I thought it'd be really interesting to watch. Seen pictures of them before, heard about them, seen them on like shows like Mysteries of what's the name of the
Museum?
Yes, thank you. And so I thought this would be really exciting to watch because they said there was new information that's available. Unfortunately, this documentary doesn't deliver what's promised.
Right. And we were expecting them to have uncovered some new details, new findings, and things that add into the mystery. And unfortunately, they didn't do that. It just kept building up more mystery. They told you what happened to some of the people, but they still never got to the point of who these warriors were. They were just giving you their greatest guesses of who they possibly represented in history.
Exactly. I wanted to find out more about why they were created, how they were created, and whom the people were, because when you see the pictures, you can tell that these are all different people, I should say. They're not just carbon copies and they all look the same. They're
Right.
each dressed differently. There's different details in the clothing, the face. Some have facial hair, some don't.
Mhm.
The eyes are different. So this isn't just randomly made. This looks like it represents actually 8,000 people
Right.
who lived.
Right. And you never find out who were these warriors. They kind of hint that they worked for the emperor or were double spies or served both sides or something, but they never actually confirm this. And I mean, most of the time, they're not even these war attires. They do dramatizations. They're just saying they were in their regular outfits, and then they put them in these war outfits to be symbolic.
So what we find out more about in this documentary is the Emperor Qin Shi Huang's mausoleum that they are buried in. And he's considered the founder of the Qing dynasty. And he was responsible for the Great Wall of China, which really was a fascinating fact we found out.
Yes, actually.
And it wasn't built as a tourist attraction like it's become. It was built to enclose to keep people out.
Right, and now they let so many people on it.
And it is really fascinating how long this wall is and how long it goes on,
Mm-hmm.
and probably how long it took to make it. That was one of the best things that we did find out about it.
Right.
But you also found out that the labor force was made up of convicts or criminals, prisoners of war from the states that they conquered. And the numbers of those builders is really surprising. There may have been as many as 700,000 workers.
Yeah, that one at least was a surprise.
And the dynasty lasted 15 years. So that was really interesting information we didn't know. But then you get into details like you're watching the Apothecary Diaries. And this definitely inspired the Apothecary Diaries. When you watch it, you learn about how his kingdom was taken from him, how not only he was murdered, and one of his children were put in his place, but then later on, all the other children were murdered, and that brother's children were murdered, and all the people that worked with him were murdered. And
Yeah.
it was just like, it was like a horror story when you were watching it.
Right, and this was all just so certain people could stay in power, and the stuff about the unclean blood and all that turns out was true in their history, and it's a little scary to see that this was just so commonplace. And it kind of makes sense when you see some of these anime, whether they're based in China or they are from China and stuff. When they have deaths in their shows and stories all the time, it's nothing. It's been so ingrained into the society all the way from these dynasties to now that it's so commonplace. Death is nothing for them.
And it was so surprising that this represented the political machinations of 210 BC.
Yeah.
It's just like, wow, really? And so many of these anime that we've watched that take place in Imperial China really have their roots in history.
Yeah.
And learning that, as you said, it was so easy for people to want to take over others' kingdoms and not minding what they had to do to get it. And then you learn that this has really happened throughout history all over the world. Within every civilization, you find out that this has happened. In one way, it's kind of depressing to learn that that's how the world was all those years ago.
Right.
And when they do these archaeological digs looking for information, it normally doesn't turn out being anything happy or joyful or that can be inspiring. It ends up being like this.
Right. And that is the most off-putting thing about it. One, the big lack of new information that actually goes with finding something new, which just keeps adding to the mystery, is learning this, and some of them actually being proud that this happened. And we understand for a lot that's just part of it, and that's what they're comfortable with. Understandably, it's just really off-putting. I think that's why a lot of people probably did not talk about this. This has been one of those wonders of the world that you can't explain, and right now I think it still is unexplained because through their dramatizations they just kind of showed just how violent this history was, and you still didn't know how these warriors were. Part of it is starting to sound like they were memorial statues for these people because look how many people they took out. That's what's beginning to really look like.
Well, as you mentioned, there are so many unanswered questions, but the two questions that were answered: the soldiers amid the remnants of sculpted servants, entertainers, and horses and trainers were meant to protect and serve the emperor in the afterlife. And that's a lot like the history of Egypt.
Yes.
When you have the pharaoh's burial. And unfortunately, during that time, they would actually take out the servants and the animals.
Go with them.
Yes. And then everything would be set up like they're going to cross over the river Styx. And then they would be living like they did here. I'm just grateful, and hopefully that's not the case, because then it's an ending cycle like a lot of belief systems in the world think. The mysteries doesn't delve at all into the belief system that led to the preparations and how it was done, like we've learned from Egyptian research. And so you don't know how this was done. You don't know if, again, they were buried with their actual warriors and wives and people and they were taken out, or if these were representations. And also, so many other skeletons we did see were discovered amongst them, but they were disjointed and just thrown around because of grave robbers.
Right.
So you don't know whom is whom, and they're attempting to put back together not only the Terracotta warriors, we'll get to that secondly, but also a lot of the skeletons trying to identify people.
Right.
And then the second thing I wanted to address is what you mentioned. None of the clay warriors were discovered intact. Whenever we see pictures, it looks like they were all just standing in this mausoleum in perfect condition. But in this documentary, it shows you footage they've recorded where they were broken up and they've had to painstakingly put them back together.
Right.
Now that in itself was very interesting.
Yes.
Because you didn't know that. It shows you that they have a real love for their culture and for the history of their country.
True.
Which really is to be commended.
Right.
Because that's painstaking and timely and costly.
Yeah.
And they want to do that.
Decades, or even for some who've been there for part of their lives restoring these statues. It was really a passion project for a lot of these people working here.
And the last thing I want to touch on is that what's fascinating that we did find out is that out of the 8,000 warriors, 1,200 of them, only 1,200 of them, were painted in color, in vivid colors bearing different and distinctive faces like we mentioned in the beginning.
Right.
But the rest of them were just the terracotta.
Right.
So what was special about this 1,200? Did the original 1,200 become the blueprint for all the others?
Right.
Or were these actual 1,200 people that existed and their visages were made? There's a coffin that they did find amidst all the warriors. It's decayed, and they're really, again, painstakingly trying to open it and be very careful and gentle with it so they can find out, actually exhume it, and who's inside and what bearing it'll have on knowing about these unknown warriors.
Right.
So if you're like me and you like learning about a lot of history, This is not the documentary for you if you want to know about the Terracotta Warriors, but if you want to know about the history of this particular ruler in 210 BC, Wang, then this is what you should watch because you're going to get exactly what you want. But I do like the information I did learn on the historical value, as well as the little bit of information we did learn about the Warriors.
Right.
So if you've seen the mysteries of the Terracotta Warriors on Netflix, let us know what you think in the comments. And if you haven't, it's exclusively on there. By the way, there have been other documentaries made on these warriors.
Yes.
So you might want to go online and check those out as well.
Right. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and click the notification bell to updates on SOFHAB reviews and lots of other types of videos.
And be sure to visit Rascal Entertainment's channel for a plethora of videos, fun videos, and reviews, and mashups, and so much
Which
more.
mine will be guest starring on my channel very soon.
Yes, looking forward to it. And thank you again for sharing our videos, watching and subscribing. We appreciate you so much. You are our specials no matter what channel we're on.
Yes. I'm Rascal.
I'm Julie.
Have a fantastic day.
Continue to be happy, healthy, whole, and oh so wonderful. See you next time.
And the why.